team, it's time for the Daily Detangler. I thought I'd start the week off with orchestrating Stratecution. And, those are two words that we've really embraced and actually brought to the market, if you will. And these are phrases that we almost use on a daily basis, and yet most of the people outside of our team haven't really heard of these, and they certainly haven't thought about them. And I was reflecting back on my own journey to wrestle with these two phrases. And one of the things that I really had to go through and figure out was this idea of what Catalyst calls operating with a bifocal lens. And I thought this would be a good thing to share. After I talked to Catalyst, he was talking through this idea of what it means to drive action, right? And also what we might need to work through as we work together this week to be more impactful. So one of the things that I remember, if I put myself back into my detangler of the past, Brian of the past versus where I am now, one of the things that was really illuminating that I would really double click in on to my prior self would be this idea of perspective. And from the webinar, Catalyst talked about when it comes to sales enablement, thinking through what sales enablement is, it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And the perspective that people have about information, processes, even other people and how they perceive other people, and then how they perceive phrases like strategy or go to market or even selling or customer. All these perspectives come into play. And it's interesting because everybody has a unique experience with their past interactions they've had or their past situations, and their perspectives that they bring to complex ecosystem challenges can really accelerate progress, or it can really slow it down. So what does that mean to us? And how does this idea of bifocal lenses impact how I try to operate on a daily basis? And what are some of those tangles there? And this is a pair of glasses, and the thing about the bifocal lens is, if you have glasses or you know about glasses, is the idea of the bifocal actually came about from seeing far and seeing near or close. And they used to have a line. You could tell that there were bifocal lenses because there would be this line on the glasses. Well, today's technology and manufacturing processes allows what's called progressive lenses, where you can have basically two different prescriptions in the same set of glasses without that annoying line demarking between the two prescriptions. And this idea of progressive lenses, this hidden line that exists in this pair of glasses, is an interesting analog for tackling today's ecosystem challenges, especially where VUCA comes into play. And this idea of wearing my superhero suit, right? Putting on the suit. When I thought about that and we did that work to figure out what our superpowers would be, one of the things that I wanted to put on in my superhero suit was this idea of the new set of glasses. What are those glasses going to help me do? They're going to help me see differently. So what does that mean? From the webinar on the evolution of sales enablement and sales enablement at a crossroads, Scott talked about this idea of Stratecution and these two domains coming together. One domain is strategy, one is tactics. And, these fundamental questions of, are we doing the right things? And are we doing those things right? And the first time I saw this concept or heard of this concept, I thought, yeah, this is great. Kind of a branding thing. But then I remember talking and working through some of this, or maybe it was on a team call where Catalyst talked about this idea of the millions of, if not billions of dollars being spent on strategy work, and the billions of dollars being spent on tactics. And it's kind of one or the other. You have companies and services and technologies in some cases on strategy, definitely a lot of services on strategy. And you have a lot of analysis happening there. And then when it comes to tactics, you have a lot of vendors and platforms, and also services to help execute tactically. And what he would talk about is this idea of you have to do both, and what does that even look like? And one of the things that where this came into play as a case study example was the Sales Enablement Society. And I remember being part of that and how hard it was to understand, look, what are we trying to do here? What are we trying to build, versus what am I going to do on a daily basis? And what is the outcome we're trying to achieve? And how do I navigate the choices I'm going to make and how I'm going to use my time? And one of the things that Scott would talk about is this idea of sales enablement leaders having, to blend these perspectives. And he put this visual into the letter to members, like we have to have an awareness that there's multiple perspectives, and then we have to operate in both of these perspectives. And fast forward, that means to me this idea of Stratecution. So how does that play out? Well, to me, it's the if I don't know what gets it ain't what I don't know that gets me into trouble. It's what I know for sure that just ain't so. The Mark Twain quote. And it's interesting. There are professions like the training profession who teach that you can be strategic and name it and claim it kind of thing. And they say, go be strategic and go spend an hour being strategic, and therefore you are strategic because you use the word strategy and you ask some strategic questions. And then there are a whole bunch of tactical solutions, and the solutioning aspect of sales enablement is just massive. So one of the things that I struggled with was, well, how is Stratecution going to help me solve problems? Or how is Stratecution going to help me navigate to an outcome? Or how is Stratecution going to help me navigate not only how I relate to others, but what I create and produce? And how is Stratecution going to help me focus on the right things? What does that even mean? And then when it comes to doing those things right, it seemed like a lot of the things I was doing was just, going into the abyss. I was doing a lot of things, but how do I make sure that what I'm doing actually matters, and matters to who, right? So what do I do, and why? And the Stratecution lenses help me wrestle with this ambiguity and this idea of the uncomfortable nature of operating with a bifocal lens. This idea of one of the lenses here is this idea of strategy, where it tends to be a top-down type of thing, and I got to do the right things. And this idea of the tactics, which tends to be a bottom-up thing, and to do things right. If I just did the tactics and I fancy myself as an operator, building out in the scale phase of our transformation journey, who says that the things I'm doing are the right things? Well, I do. If I just execute tactically and I solution, my solution compared to somebody else's is based on my ability to persuade or the relationships that I have, because I'm unbolted from the strategy lens. Conversely, if I just sit around and do strategy, what does that even mean? Does that mean I'm writing things up and hitting send? Does that mean I'm whiteboarding out on the strategy side? Does that mean I'm talking through with clients and customers? Well, if I did that, I'd have almost this idea of analysis paralysis, or this idea of I'm building things that are not a reflection of the actual reality, because I'm inside my own head. So each of these, if I'm left to my own devices, actually create a lot of wasted time and effort. And the thing that I would struggle with is, well, what am I doing today so that I can accomplish the objectives of tomorrow? Do I understand what the objectives of tomorrow are? And then what am I doing today to get there? And one of the things that's interesting about it is this idea of doing things for myself and doing things by myself versus doing things for and with others, and how this changes. I can do this by myself and feel a false sense of security that I'm doing the right things. However, as soon as I engage with somebody else, even just one other person, their view of strategy, their view of tactics, and what it means to blend so that we do the right things today to accomplish tomorrow's objectives, their perspective is completely different. A way that shows up is this idea of what is impact? What's our goal? And sometimes I really wonder if I'm actually connected to the goal and the time horizon that we're operating with. I like the idea of changing go to customer, but that's almost like a lifetime goal. Like that could be something that is my higher purpose in life, go to customer. So how do I break this down into what's the impact? Is it the impact today? Is it the impact in this second? And then what about the idea of time, and how do I use my time? And what is my perspective of time? And I shared that last week, this idea of time and bending time and the back and forth we had in our learning by doing. And this perspective plays out in this Stratecution challenge, right? So strategy and tactics blending together to what end, and what time are we going to use, and how are we going to apply it? And when I factor in accelerated client time, the time zone of Catalyst and the time zone that our clients operate within, and how fast they're moving, and think about my time zone and my working from home situation, and I have it's COVID, and I can just hunker down and knock out things, but is it connected to the accelerated client time? And what does blending strategy and tactics mean in the idea of accelerated client time? So one of the things that I had to work through is in how do I untangle this challenge of being comfortable in blending both strategy and tactics, is this idea that we're engaged in a transformational journey. There is a current state, and we're always changing, and our clients are always changing to get to a future state. And there's new strategies and there's new strategic challenges, right? In our Stratecution lens, strategy is evolving and it's constantly being tweaked. And strategy, even though it's a longer term focus, requires an understanding, and I have to be clear on my own role in impacting the strategy. But because we're on a change journey and our clients are on a change journey, that means I need to think differently. And we've spent a lot of time on that. I also have to act differently. And this is perhaps the challenge that I have the most is this idea of action in the context of blending strategy and tactics together. What do I mean? What does it mean to act differently, to do both? And then what kind of impact? What kind of impact on a daily basis? What does my impact look like? Does it mean I'm calling people and talking things through? Does it mean I'm sending emails? Does it mean I'm building an output daily? What does it mean to impact in this change? If I agree that change is always happening, and if I agree that learning is always happening, what am I doing? How do I look different when I look back at myself? And can I see my own evolutionary journey? And that is how execution starts to evolve, is because I'm doing something different, not everybody else. Not this everybody else needs to change except I'm good, but this awareness and this responsibility and accountability that I need to execute differently. So that this is, how do I do that, right? How do I reflect on what I'm thinking and how my thinking has evolved? How do I reflect on what my actions are and how I've adjusted my actions to help us get there as a team? And then what kind of impact can I see in that progress? What does progress look like as I'm executing differently? And one of the things that was really pivotal in my own trying to understand how to operate in this, multiple domains and putting on these bifocal lenses was this idea of thinking about time. And I know I bring up time a lot, but it's in the context of what is the perspective of time from a client lens and a salesperson lens. Salespeople are moving way faster than most people in their company, and salespeople are having to make decisions and move forward quickly. And when they turn around, it feels like from these calls that we're having with Mimecast and IQVIA that, you hear these account executives saying, I don't have people aligned. I turn around and nobody's there. And yet the executives are like, well, of course they're there. We have all these resources. So what is happening in that? And I think a lot of it has to do with the idea of an account executive and how they view their idea of being strategic. To salespeople, a quarterly lens is strategic because they're in this idea, this VUCA world, and if they're highly strategic, they're going to think about quarterly and weekly goals and what they're doing to achieve them. And then their use of an hour of time is dramatically different than a lot of other people inside the company. I remember you having to think and operate in 10-minute increments and 20-minute increments. And that was a chunk of time. What could I get done? Oh, I've got 10 minutes. What can I get done? And who can I call? What email can I send? And I would operate in the margins of time, it seemed like, where everybody else is thinking in terms of days and weeks. What do I need to get done this week? I'm thinking about what do I need to get done in 20 minutes, 10 minutes. So my perspective of time is a bit different in a sales lens. So if that's the view of sales and how fast they're moving, maybe they have a view of strategy and doing the right things on a quarterly basis. And then in an hourly view, tactically, how do they do the right things? And this perspective is different depending on probably how far away people are from the situation. So when I think about myself, how close am I to understanding the situations of Catalyst, and how am I empathizing with those situations and how time is unfolding in an hourly basis? And he shared the calls he's having. How do I embrace that and snap into that? And that requires me to think about, what am I doing on a daily and weekly basis, and how am I going to orchestrate that? And what is that, right? So what is the orchestration view of working backwards, using air quotes, working backwards from strategy and working forward, right, to get momentum in the tactics? Because that's what it feels like. I'm working backwards from this idea of strategy and what we're trying to achieve. And it's not an annual strategy. It's a quarterly strategy. And how do I monetize, my own services all the way through to how do we drive long-term sustainable impact at IQVIA, and how do I help Catalyst be successful? Those are what I consider to be strategic questions, right? And it would be interesting, Catalyst probably has different ones, and I'll share some of those here in a second. So what it comes down to on that is, how am I using my time, and how am I executing, so to speak? And what is execution? And execution has to do with, well, doing what's valuable and doing what's impactful. And these are two revelations, two ahas that come out of thinking and operating in this bifocal lens, and having to be comfortable with, look, my definition of value is completely different than Catalyst, and I have to reconcile that. And that's a journey I've gone through for a long time, multiple years. What's the definition of value here? What does it mean to be valuable? And then there's this idea of what's impactful, and what's impactful to me personally versus what's impactful to Catalyst. And that's a journey too, to understand what impact is really needed, and how am I empathizing with accelerated client time, and what it means to be impactful. And these are choices that I can, require me to put on the hero suit. And they're also choices for me to understand situations and have empathy for what's valuable and what's impactful, because it might be stuff that I don't even hear or not even understand or not even relate to. So how do I embrace that? And that's the importance of orchestration. Am I thinking through the people, process, and information to do what's valuable and to do what's impactful? And then who gets to determine that? Do I believe that Catalyst has that nailed, and he knows what's valuable and he knows what's impactful because he's the closest to clients? And can I relate to that? How do I do that? So one of the things that I pulled out was, from the webinar, what is an orchestrator? Well, they're mission and goal focused. That sounds like a lot of being in this bifocal lens. They prioritize the right goals at the right moments. That seems like a bifocal lens. Guiding the narrative by confronting reality. The narrative might be more strategic, but the reality is it's more tactical. That seems like a bifocal lens. Driving results by design, not effort. Well, everybody else is into effort, more. How do I operate in that bifocal lens? Unlocking energy, which is potential, right? This idea of potential energy versus kinetic energy. What unlocking energy is a potential energy. It's bottled up. So how do I unleash it? That's a strategic kind of, working back from strategy challenge, but creating momentum in the now tactically. And then how do I catalyze change through collaboration? The change is our future state. That's working backwards. What is the future state? Collaboration is how we move forward in the tactics to get us there. And one of the insights that Catalyst provided was, how does he think about these types of things? And if you look at the questions on the right, the questions he's asking himself, they're very much in the vein of blending strategy and tactics. And just read through these on the right and ask yourself, as you're reading these, how many times do you ask yourself these questions? And that's what I did. And I didn't like the answer. I was like, holy crap, I never asked myself this. Maybe I shouldn't be laughing, because this is a oh shit moment, because when I read these, I'm like, good grief, is that just a Catalyst thing? No. It's a Stratecution. It's an orchestration thing. It's an operating in the now while also being strategic. And then I can't beat myself up over that. I mean, where else am I going to learn this stuff? We're learning it now. We're learning this together. He's reacting to something that I put out, and he put this out. He has unconscious competence. How do we mine that? And so I can't beat myself up over that. Go, oh my gosh, I never asked myself these questions. I have to lean into this and say, well, these are these good questions, and are they going to help me get there to be a better orchestrator and to operate in its bifocal lens? So that's an example of connecting the dots. And this, what's happening in the moment for me is, I'm seeing more about and embracing and doubling down on this idea of I want to get to the strategic end goal here and work backwards from that. And also, how do I get more comfortable in the day to day and also navigate the day to day to move forward and create momentum. And that's where I see the power of these things that we're working on, like learning by doing. And I can see how that's going to help us move forward while also being aligned on the strategy. The idea of we're building something from nothing that helps us take action towards moving forward, but also aligning to the strategy of creating what's possible. What's possible selling. There's a lot that we're working on in this blend of strategy and tactics. And I hope that this was helpful for you to think through and maybe even apply today. How are you doing both? And are you able to answer some of these more strategic questions and at the same time have more comfortable action in the day to day where you're feeling aligned to what we're trying to achieve? So that's been today's Daily Detangler. Thanks so much for joining. Have a great week. We'll see you tomorrow.